In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and vast green fields, Peter and May were known to all. They had been married for years but had no children, a fact that often made people whisper behind their backs. Yet despite their struggles, their love for each other remained unwavering. Peter was a kind-hearted man with a gentle spirit, always wearing a warm smile. May was a cheerful and lively woman, full of laughter and energy. Their bond was unbreakable, and their happiness was evident to anyone who saw them. Whether at home or outside, they were always together, walking side by side, sharing stories, laughing at jokes only they understood, and enjoying each other's company. Every evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, they would take a stroll through the village, hand in hand. Their love was a rare kind, one that didn't waver in the face of hardships. They had built a world of joy within themselves, and nothing from the outside could shake it. But in the village, people always found something to say. "See them," some would whisper, huddled in corners. "That woman is wasting this man's time. Why won't she leave him so he can marry a real woman who can give him children? She must be using something on him," others would murmur. "How can a man be this happy with a barren woman? He should have left her long ago." Some even believed May had bewitched Peter, that she had trapped him under a spell so he wouldn't desire another wife. Others shook their heads in pity, convinced that Peter was blind to his misfortune. But Peter and May? They never paid attention to the gossip. While others whispered, they laughed. While others judged, they loved. They knew what they had was special, something beyond what the world could understand. Their love wasn't built on conditions or expectations. It was built on trust, friendship, and the simple joy of being together. One evening, as they walked past a group of villagers who were secretly gossiping about them, Peter leaned toward May and whispered, "Did you hear that? They say I'm under your spell." May chuckled and squeezed his hand. "Well, if loving you is magic, then I must be the greatest sorceress alive." Peter threw his head back in laughter. "Then never break the spell, my love." And just like that, they continued their walk, unbothered, wrapped in the warmth of their love. But life has a way of testing even the strongest of hearts, and soon, Peter and May would face challenges far greater than village gossip. Life in the village continued as usual, but deep within Peter and May's home, things were about to change forever. One afternoon, when May had gone to the market, her friend Sandra visited Peter. She walked into the house, her eyes filled with fake concern. "Peter, I need to tell you something important," she began, her voice low and serious. Peter looked at her curiously. "What is it, Sandra?" Sandra sighed deeply and sat down. "May told me something in confidence, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. She admitted to me that she is a witch, Peter. She said she has eaten up all her unborn children in her coven, and that she knows she will never have a child." Peter's eyes widened in shock. "What? That can't be true. May would never say such a thing." Sandra nodded quickly. "I swear it, Peter. She told me herself. That's why you have been childless all these years. She brought you an empty womb, and she is pretending to be a good wife. But the truth is, she is the reason you don't have children." Peter sat in silence, his mind spinning. He had always loved May, but could this be true? Was he living with a woman who had secretly destroyed their future? Sandra placed a hand on his knee and leaned closer. "Peter, I am different. If you marry me, I will give you as many children as you want. I am fertile, and I can prove it to you right now." Peter swallowed hard, his mind clouded with confusion. He had never thought of being with another woman, but the idea of having children made him weak. That evening, in May's absence, Peter and Sandra betrayed May. A new reality. Months passed, and one day, Sandra came running to Peter with excitement. "Peter, I am pregnant," she announced. Peter's face lit up with joy. "Are you sure?" "Yes, you see, I told you I was fertile. This child is yours, your own blood. But I cannot have this child out of wedlock. You must marry me." Peter was overwhelmed. All that Sandra had told him now seemed true. May was truly barren, and she had deceived him all these years. Sandra was carrying his child, the child he had always longed for. "But May," he muttered. Sandra scoffed. "That witch? Why is she still in your house? Chase her away. She has failed, Peter. You need to get rid of her before this baby is born." Peter hesitated for a moment, but Sandra's words were like poison in his ears. He had made up his mind. He would get rid of May. The beginning of May's suffering. That night, when May returned home, she found Peter sitting in the dark, his face cold and hard. "Peter, are you all right?" she asked, concerned. Peter stood up and pointed a finger at her. "You witch! You have eaten up all my children in your coven and brought me an empty womb. I have wasted my years with you." May's heart dropped. "Peter, what are you saying?" "I am saying I am done with you. You have failed. Leave my house now because I am tired of you." Tears welled up in May's eyes. "Peter, our marriage is for better or worse. I will not leave you." Her words made Peter even angrier. He wanted her gone, but she was refusing to leave. So he decided to make her life unbearable. Day after day, Peter tormented May. He insulted her, humiliated her, and refused to eat her food. He would leave the house for days and return only to remind her that she was barren and useless. "You are cursed. You have ruined my life," he would shout at her. But no matter what he did, May remained strong. She endured it all, believing that one day, Peter would come to his senses. A dark plan. As time passed, Peter grew more frustrated. No matter how much he insulted and mistreated May, she refused to leave. "I need to do something worse," he thought. "Something that will break her spirit completely." With Sandra by his side, Peter began plotting something terrible. Something that would finally force May out of his life forever. The sun shone brightly that morning as May arrived at her office. She greeted her colleagues warmly, as she always did, and settled down to begin her work. The air was filled with light chatter and the sound of papers shuffling. Just another normal day. But suddenly, the office door burst open. Peter stormed in, his eyes wild with anger and something else, cruel satisfaction. In his hand he held something disgusting, a dirty, smelly undergarment. Flies buzzed around it, spreading a horrible stench across the room. Everyone froze. Peter raised the filthy underwear high above his head and shouted, "May, is this not your dirty pant? So you can't even wash your own underwear? Look at how it's smelling like a rotten rat." May gasped in horror. She felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her. Her colleagues stared at her in shock, some covering their noses, others whispering amongst themselves. Tears welled up in her eyes as she lowered her head in shame. Peter had always insulted her at home, but this was too much. She couldn't take it anymore. That evening, as she walked home, tears streamed down her face. She spoke to herself as she walked. "Enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. I will pack my things and leave tonight. I deserve peace." A stranger who changed everything. As she continued on the road, lost in her thoughts, a car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and a deep voice called out, "May?" She looked up, wiping her tears, and was surprised to see a familiar face. John, her husband's boss and the owner of the company Peter worked for. "May, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" John asked, concern written all over his face. Unable to hold it in, May burst into fresh tears. John stepped out of his car and led her to a quiet place where she could speak freely. Through her sobs, she told him everything. How Peter had betrayed her, humiliated her, and turned her life into a living nightmare. John clenched his fists in anger. "That foolish man. I have known Peter for years, and I knew he was irresponsible. But I never thought he would treat you like this." He took a deep breath and looked into her eyes. "May, you are a wife material. I have admired your strength and kindness for years. Even before you married Peter, I knew he didn't deserve you. Now that you are free from him, marry me. Let me take care of you, love you, and give you the happiness you deserve." May was taken aback. She had never imagined another man wanting her after all she had been through. But looking at John, she saw sincerity in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt valued. She took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and nodded. "Yes, John, I will marry you." A new beginning. That very night, May packed her belongings and left Peter's house forever. She moved into John's mansion, where she was treated like a queen. Meanwhile, Peter and Sandra officially got married and began their new life together. But life has a way of rewarding good and punishing evil. John and May's wedding was the talk of the town. It was grand, beautiful, and filled with joy. People who once mocked May now admired her, saying, "She suffered, but God lifted her up." Months after their wedding, May discovered she was pregnant. John was overjoyed. He held her close and whispered, "God has finally blessed me with the woman I've always wanted, and now we are going to have a child together." Karma finds Peter and Sandra. The happiness in John and May's home was a sharp contrast to the misery in Peter and Sandra's. One morning, Peter received the biggest shock of his life. Sandra sat him down with a cold expression and said, "Peter, the baby I'm carrying is not yours." Peter's heart dropped. "What?" Sandra shrugged. "You think you are the only man in my life? You were just a fool. I used to get what I wanted. Now that I am carrying another man's child, I have no business with you. I'm leaving." She packed her bags and walked out. As she stepped onto the road, a speeding vehicle came out of nowhere and hit her. She died instantly. Peter stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The fall of Peter. With no wife, no job, and no home, Peter's life crumbled. John, furious at how Peter had treated May, fired him from his company. With no money, Peter was forced to move into a small, broken-down thatched house. Day by day, he suffered. To feed himself became a struggle. The once proud man who had mocked May now begged for food. People in the village pointed at him and said, "See what happens when you mistreat a good woman?" He lost everything. A happy ending for May. While Peter suffered, May and John flourished. Their love grew stronger, and they cherished every single moment together. May, once mocked and humiliated, was now a respected woman in the village. She carried her pregnancy with joy, knowing that she was finally where she was meant to be, with a man who truly loved and valued her. Moral lessons. 1. Treat people with kindness. The way you treat others will always come back to you. 2. Good women deserve good men. If a man does not value a good woman, someone else will. 3. Karma is real. What goes around, comes around. Peter lost everything because he betrayed and mistreated May. 4. God's time is the best. May suffered, but in the end, she was rewarded with true happiness. Final message to my viewers. Thank you all for watching this story. I hope you learned something valuable today. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned for more exciting and inspiring stories. See you in the next video. Don't forget, true love always wins. The end.